Welcome to the Real Turf Techs podcast for the technician that wants to get real. Follow along as we talk to industry professionals and address hot topics that we all face. Along the way, we'll learn tips and tricks. I'm your host, Trent Manning. Let's have some fun. This episode of Real Turf Techs on Golf Course Industries Superintendent Radio Network is presented by Foley Company, a strong supporter of equipment technicians and golf course maintenance departments everywhere. Foley Company offers a proven solution for above and below the turf for turf professionals everywhere. To learn more about Foley Company's line of reel grinders, bed knife grinders, and the Air 2 G2 family of products, or to find a distributor, visit www.foleyco.com. Foley, ready for play. Welcome to the Real Turf Techs podcast, episode 115. Today we're talking to Brian Knoche, equipment manager at Lost Rail Golf Club in Gretna, Nebraska. Lost Rail is a private 18-hole par 71 designed by Scott Hoffman. Brian is the lone tech in the shop. Let's talk to Brian. Welcome, Brian, to the Real Turf Techs podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. We're going to have a blast like we always do.
Perfect.
Tell us how you got into the turf industry.
Mine was actually, I kind of stumbled into it. I moved out to Nebraska from Connecticut in the winter of 2010, and I just wanted a part-time job for some fun money, keep bills in the house and just have a little fun money. And I saw on a website, the superintendent at Indian Creek Golf Course in Elkhorn, Nebraska, he had a blog page and it had a link to employment. So I clicked on it, and next thing you know, that March, I'm out raking bunkers with a bunch of high school kids at the age of 35, at the age of 33. And did it for one season and asked me at the end of the year if I was willing to come back the following year. And I said, absolutely. That following spring, he trained me to mow greens. I did that for 2 more seasons. And I asked him if his equipment manager needed an assistant on the weekends, if he wanted some time off, because I knew how many hours he worked throughout the week, working 7 days. And about 4 months of that, he trained me how he wanted things done. And then that last 2 months of the season, I worked a Saturday and Sunday by myself and gave him some time off, and that just stuck. And that was what I did for another, I think, 3 seasons there. And then worked for a John Deere OEM dealer as a mechanic, and then went into sales and didn't like the OEM side. So I had a buddy of mine, took a job as a superintendent at a private club in Omaha and Shadow Ridge Country Club, and needed a mechanic, and worked for him for a couple years. And then this brand new golf course opened up. So I said, let's try a grow-in. And I went to and by the feel, probably be where I retire from.
That's so good.
Fell in love with the property and really liked just the flow and how laid back things are. And there is a demand on me for high cut quality, but I enjoy it. And if I don't set high expectations for myself, I'll never have high expectations. So it's all self-induced, and I have a great relationship with my super, and the rest it's been history. I've been there. This March would be the start of my 3rd year there. I look forward.
Yeah. When did y'all open?
So I started there March 21. We opened September 1st of 22 for 60 days, closed that October, did a bunch of tee box renovations because some of the par 3 tee boxes weren't big enough for the amount of play that we had. And then opened up again in April and just closed down first week in November this season, and we'll be closed probably until April again.
What all do you do over the wintertime?
So over the wintertime, I will take from basically, this year's been abnormally warm we've been averaging about 50 for highs, which is really rare out here through Christmas. But usually what I'll do is I'll take from Thanksgiving to Christmas. And if I didn't like the way something flowed in my shop, I'll reorganize it. And then after Christmas break, first of the year, I'll pressure wash everything, clean it all. And then I'll start servicing it, grinding out what needs to be ground, and start making extra lists with something I'm blessed with warranty. So, and then we do a lot of tree work on the golf course. We sand our bent grass fairways really late once we close. And then I'll get pulled out there for, well, you saw the ravines when you were out visiting. We'll do a bunch of underbrush ravine clear up. There's a 6-man crew that works the winter. So I do in the shop stuff that I need to do to get my side of things going as equipment manager. And then I also help the crew prep the golf course through the winter for opening up.
Right, right.
Fun. It's nice to have that change back and forth to be able to see the agronomy practices that are done and the cleanup stuff that's done for fine detail work as well, not just be a wrench in the shop.
Yeah, I think it's really important, to be involved not if you're just not even a hands-on person out on the course, but just to understand what, the main goal is and is creating these playing services for the membership or whoever's playing your golf course. At the end of the day, that's what we're really focused on. And I think a lot of times people, not you, but I know people, and I've been guilty myself of forgetting what the end goal is. Why am I doing all this? Why am I repairing this piece of equipment? Why am I grinding this reel? Yeah, so it'll cut grass. But, looking at the bigger picture, I think is important. And I think it's important to be involved in some of those agronomy tasks that we do on the golf course to get a better understanding for it.
Absolutely. It's nice to be considered part of the team and not, oh, he's just the mechanic. Sometimes you get busy and it's like, oh, he's just the mechanic, or you get introduced as he's just, but it is nice to be able to take that and just be like, yeah, he's just introducing me because he's got me outside learning the agronomical practices and why we spray this at this time of year because of this. We're spraying this because we're seeing this. And the education that I get from my super on the agronomy side is really nice because I don't have a turf degree. So everything I've ever,
right. And
mechanic side of it. So it's cool to learn the turf science as well.
Well, I think it's really important too, because it builds that relationship. You can share knowledge with him on equipment. He can share knowledge with you on agronomy practices on the course. And you just build that rapport and have a better relationship with all that going on.
Oh, absolutely.
All right, time out. So you got to Lost Rail, but how did you know you wanted to turn wrenches and be a mechanic? So you started working at that golf course. You really enjoyed the work, but did you have any kind of mechanical background? Where'd that come from?
I went to a trade school for high school back in Connecticut, Henry Abbott Tech. And I had 2 family members in the electrical business and my parents pushed me to be an electrician. So as a young kid, I did what my parents asked of me and I went to school to be an electrician. And actually it's funny because the alternator went out on my pickup one day driving to school. So I got to work and took a voltmeter from the electrical shop and started diagnosing charging and all this, kind of like what I did diagnosing electrical work in a house. And I'm like, this is way more fun. And I kind of got a taste of it my freshman year in high school when we went through every single shop. We did an exploratory program. So I went through culinary arts, learned how to cook a little bit, learned how to do hairdressing and cosmetology. And when I got to the auto shop, I just saw what some of those kids were doing. And I was like, this is really cool. And took it with that one repair on my pickup, started fixing my truck. And I said to my parents when I graduated, I'm like, this ain't what I want to do. And they're like, well, you're old enough now to make your own decisions. So I went to work for a construction and landscaping company as a machine operator and a mechanic, dual role. And then I went to work for a Jeep dealership. And I really liked the Jeep dealership and got into some trouble as a kid, young, dumb kid. Had to leave the Jeep dealership for reasons of not being able to drive. And went back to work for the construction company, kind of the same thing. And it just stuck. I'm like, I want to be a mechanic. And
that's awesome, man.
When I moved out here, and started at Indian Creek, that was what really intrigued me was the reels, like how much precision goes into cutting grass with a reeled machine. And like, this is what I want to do for a career. And 10 years later, I'm running my own shop at the golf course that I'm at, and have a good relationship with the superintendent, learn how to do budgeting and equipment purchasing. And it's really grown on me, and I like it. And I can see
That's
myself
awesome.
another 20, 25 years before I'm too old to pick anything up and need an assistant
Yeah.
or retire.
That's so good.
But,
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. I'm happy for you.
I know I won't get rich doing it. And I always tell people when they get into the golf business, us golf guys have a little bit of crazy in us. And my crazy is the golf industry, and I love it. And I get up every day at the crack of dawn, and sometimes I don't go home till it gets dark, but it's what I love to do, and I'll always do it. And it kind of keeps me on a straight and narrow path. You can't go out and party with the guys because you got to be up really early and you got a responsibility in the morning and you got stuff like that. So it's good. It was good for me to get into the golf industry. It kind of kept me out of trouble in my early 30s when I first started.
Yeah. No, that's good.
Responsibility.
Yeah, and I think we all get there at some point or another.
Oh yeah, and like you were saying when you were visiting me out here, it's like as mechanics we always want to make things go fast.
Oh yeah.
So once I
we
started
do
renting,
like to do
I wanted
that.
to make things go fast, and that was where it really stuck in the passion and knowing I wanted to be a mechanic was set in my head.
That's cool. So cool.
So,
Well, what's your least favorite part of the job? Is it sand?
no,
No. All right.
no, it's funny. I know guys they'll throw a Twitter page out there with a cutting unit and a pile of sand in the sand bin, like, oh, there go my reels, stop dressing time. But like we were just talking earlier, we sometimes take for granted about what it takes to get to those playing surfaces. And those playing surfaces are predominantly done by a lot of sand and top dressing. So like my boss will come to me like, hey, I got top dress. I'm like, go ahead. So we set a schedule where we're right at the tail end of my grind, where I got to refresh. He top dresses. I touch the grinder, touch the reels up, replace the bed lights if they need to be replaced at that time, and off we go. But he's really good with brushing it in, and he's really good with watering it in. And if we have a really heavy dew in the morning, he'll water on top of it to get it to knock back down. So what the dew it lifted up, watering sends it back down. So I'm not afraid of sand. I would say my least favorite thing, believe it or not, is just preventative maintenance, oil changes.
Okay.
I want that hard electrical problem. I want that hard hydraulic problem. I want my mind to be challenged every day. But with that being said, I also know the value of a preventative maintenance. To me, it's boring. It's, drain plug, filter, flashlight inspection, pry bar on some different joints to see if they're loose or play. But yeah, I'd say it's just oil changes. I don't like oil changes, and they're sloppy. They're dirty.
Right. No, I mean, I totally relate to it. And I'll be honest, that's another good thing. When you get an assistant, they can do a lot of that stuff.
Yes.
It works out great. And then you can focus on the fun stuff like hard electrical problems or hydraulics or, whatever. And I do think, I've met so many people in this industry, and I think most of us, we like a challenge of, whatever it is on a piece of equipment or, bring us this problem and let us try to solve it. If you're having an issue out on the course with this or that or whatever, can we make that easier for you? And everybody I've met anyway really enjoys that part of the job.
That is, yeah. It's also the team effort that's fun too. I'm blessed with it. I'm blessed that our first assistant has a lot of. He was born and raised here, and then he went down to Florida for a few years and he was a superintendent in the Naples area, but got really handy with a wrench. So there's sometimes he'll see me, racking my brain on something. I come over and be like, hey, what's it doing? And I'll explain to him what it's doing. He's like, did you try this? Did you try that? So I don't necessarily have a true assistant, but I do have a guy that's got knowledge, and he does see me struggle, and he will come over and ask me if I want a little bit of help or whatever, which is cool. And that's what I like. What I mean by team is we're not all individuals. We all kind of help each other if we can as we go, which is fun.
Yeah. And we all have a common goal, and it's nice to work together. And then, I mean, the other thing that I think about a lot is if you're stuck on an issue, whatever it is, a problem on a piece of equipment, and just talking to somebody else that is knowledgeable about the subject can get your mind spinning in different ways. It's kind of a different mindset of thinking, I guess, because I mean, just my experience anyway, is if I'm troubleshooting something, I tend to go down one path, and maybe that's the right path, maybe it isn't. But if I hadn't figured the problem out, if I talk to somebody else, they might start heading down another path. And then at the end of the conversation, I think it's easier to find out the path you need to take. And maybe it's the path they said, maybe it's the path you were on, maybe it's the path in the middle somewhere. But just having that conversation, I think, really helps get the juices flowing.
And it's good to have relationship with guys at other clubs in your area too. I guess I could say I'm blessed with the fact that most of the guys in the Omaha area that are at private clubs are extremely knowledgeable, and we're not afraid to call each other and ask each other, "Hey, I'm seeing this. Have you ever seen it before?" There's
Mm-hmm.
there's really no high ego that any of us have that we try to protect. We realize that we might be on different properties, but we're all doing the same thing. We'll help each other that way too, which is a lot of fun. You've met a handful of them. You met Brian over at Happy
Mm-hmm.
Hollow, and Brian down at Arbor, and Jordan and Nate. And, we probably don't conversate like we should, but we're there to help each other if we need it. And we all know that. So works out.
Yeah, and I mean, it's so good what y'all have going on there, and yeah, and maybe that's kind of a small group of y'all, but it doesn't matter the size. I just think it's awesome, yeah, that you have other people in the industry, in the trenches, doing the exact same thing that you can rely on day to day. I mean, if you needed to call one of them every day, they wouldn't mind. And everybody I've met in this industry is, the same way. I mean, yeah, I enjoy what I do, but I'll pick the phone up and talk to you or anybody else that wants to call and help them any way I can. I ain't going to have the answer, but I'll talk to you about it. At
Right.
least be there for moral support.
Well, a lot of the times it's guys might have seen what you're struggling with and you don't even realize it. And they're like, "Oh yeah, I saw this. I saw it. It did the exact same thing. This is what I looked at." And you're like, "Oh, you just saved me hours of frustration." But you said it best when you did your talk was, oh, you were saying a high percentage of equipment managers in our industry throughout the entire country in Canada, they're not ones that they want to help everybody. We, it's it's a huge, it's a huge business and a huge industry, but we're also tight at the same time.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, it amazes me. I mean, every time I go somewhere, whatever, I mean, everybody knows everybody. And I mean, it's just awesome. And it's almost, a family feeling. And I mean, we'll get into it, I guess, more, but at y'all's little shindig at I don't even remember the name of the restaurant, but I mean, it was just so awesome to see that group of people come together. And I know you don't get to see each other, but probably once or twice a year, but everybody's together, having a really good time, talking shop, talking whatever, talking life. And I think it's important to have that outside of the workplace too.
Yeah. And that's where
What's,
that was our symposium that, that we went to at Laszlo's there.
mm-hmm,
Some of those guys haven't seen each other for a year, and that's their time
mm-hmm,
to reconnect. And, they probably talk to each other on the phone, but being face to face for the first time, all year is nice too. But you saw all
mm-hmm,
aspects of it. You saw the small guy, a little 9-hole course in the middle of nowhere, Nebraska, talking to the guy at a private 18-hole club in Omaha or Lincoln. Like
mm-hmm.
they've been buddies for 50 years. It's just, Nebraska's very tight state. And it's cool. And it sounds like, the Carolinas and Georgia and those southern states that in the Southeast are very tight as well. Guys are not afraid to call each other and hang out, do things and stuff like that. But
Well, what's your favorite tool?
My favorite tool
Yep. What's your favorite tool?
had to be my Miller-Matic 252. It'd be my welder.
Oh, that's all right, man. Stick some stuff back together. I
I'm not,
love it.
I don't win beauty pageants with my welding. It's not bubble gum, but it holds. And it's always nice to have something come to you in pieces and stuck it back together and it holds.
Well, I've told this story 100 times. This old welder told me looks never held anything. And there's not a truer statement.
That is a very, very true statement. Looks do not hold anything.
That's right. Well, what do you do to relax or find your balance?
Oh, I'd probably play golf, just watch TV. I used to bow hunt quite a bit. I've gotten away from it just with time and stuff like that, the fall being in the golf industry, but I'm going to get back into it eventually. So it's more just playing golf and watching just some weird reality shows on TV like Moonshiners or Swamp People or something like that, depending on the season.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
But
yeah, I don't know about surprised. I've met so many people, but a lot of us mechanics don't play golf, but it seems like most of the people I met there in Nebraska, most of y'all enjoy playing golf. And I think that's great. It's awesome.
yeah, there's quite a few of us as equipment managers in Nebraska that play golf.
Very cool.
It's, for me, like when I have the opportunity to play the course I work at, I see different aftercut things when I'm playing golf than I do when I'm out just driving around in my golf cart. Look, just doing a cut quality check. So like I'll go out, we'll mow fairways on a Friday, and I might play Saturday afternoon. I might see something maybe in like a pinch point area where the guy turned around and it mowed funny that I would never see just going down the middle of the fairway on a regular cut quality check. So it's nice to play. You see different aspects of what you do. So it's one thing I got going for me there, being playing, but like they say, golf's not for everybody.
Well, no, it's not for everybody, but I think it's awesome that you play, and I think that's a really valid point of seeing the golf course from a golfer's perspective. Because yeah, we can ride even driving down the middle of the fairway, and we don't notice stuff like we would if we're actually out there walking around and playing the course. And your eyes drawn to different things when you're driving around, but when you're out there getting ready to take a shot, you're really taking all that in. So, I would encourage people, even if you don't play golf, get out there and walk a few holes every once in a while just to see it from a different perspective. And I remember this was back in the early 90s or mid 90s. Our superintendent, he had a voice recorder, had little miniature tapes. I'm dating myself here, but he would walk the course just like the golfer, would play, but from tee box to green, every hole. And he would make notes on his voice recorder. And then he'd come back and write those down and get his to-do list together for the assistants and the crew. And he was seeing it all from the golfer's perspective. And I think that's really important.
My boss at my previous job, we would play golf together. We play the golf course that we worked at. And we also played before I got into the golf full-time job. I was a salesman and I would stop and we'd play the golf course and he'd write it down on a scorecard. He'd pick the hole and we'd just go the way you wrote your number and he'd write down what he needed to fix on that hole if he saw something out of place. So and that was where I learned it from, was looking at what we do it from a different perspective, was actually playing golf with him and seeing him jot notes down on a scorecard.
Yeah, no, that's an awesome idea.
It's interesting how much you actually learn from your peers, whether you see it or not. Like sometimes you just think it's a habit. You're learning it because it's a habit, but it's actually not. You're learning it because you're watching somebody else do it, which
Right.
It works. And I found that playing golf, I noticed a lot more in green surrounds than anywhere else from a golfer standpoint. I see a lot more mistakes with cutting in a green surround area, like approaches and thinning, like, collar areas and stuff like that.
Yep, we all have that person on a walk mower or even a triplex and not lifting in time and all those things. It happens all the time. Well, what's the strangest thing you've seen at work?
The strangest thing I've seen at work was I had a 5410, and this was at my last job, and the front reels would intermittently turn on and off as they were mowing. And if you cycled, they'd come up and stop and then turn back on. And it ended up being, I got a hold of a guy from Smith Turf out in Virginia by the name of Burke Anders. Very well-known guy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And
he's been on the podcast too.
Okay. And he was friends, superintendent out here, did a stint in Virginia for a while, and he hooked up with Burke and ended up called Burke and went over, all the solenoids and the valves were good. And I said to him, it's got to be something in the valve block. And he's like, I don't know. He's like, the valve block's solid aluminum. It's all just milled out how it needs to be. Everything seats against it. He's like, pull it and just check it out. And I ended up pulling the valve block out. This is after like 12 and 14 hours of diagnosis time. And I looked where that front reel valve seated, and the lip where the valve seats was broken off of the valve block. So
no way.
That's an oil. And I called him back and told him what it was. And he's like, see, he's like, you were in the right direction. He's like, I just needed to reassure you. But it's funny to see something that's just milled out of a hunk of aluminum fail.
Yeah, no, that's a really good one. And I mean, that's a tough one because that ain't something that happens very often or you ever see that.
No, it was just probably I would say it's probably a once in a lifetime thing for me. I'll probably never see that again. But I learned a lot from it. I learned that my diagnostic procedures, I'm confident in them. And sometimes you have to reach outside the box. But if it wasn't for Burke, it might have taken me another 20 hours to figure out that machine. It was just good to have a little reinsurance and a guy that's been in the Toro industry for so long, able to help me with that and say, yeah, you need to, go into that block and see if you do see something in there. So that'll always stick to me.
And like you're saying, I mean, sometimes that's all you need is just that little reassurance. Like, I think you're headed in the right direction. Take that thing apart and see what you find.
So, replace that valve block.
Nice, good stuff.
Still mowing today for the guy that replaced me. So
was that, how old a machine?
It was
it still under warranty?
It was a 2006 5410 and it had 8,700 hours on it.
Wow. That's crazy.
Still going now with over 10,000.
Man, that is nuts. That's so crazy. But it does remind me, it was a 5310 tractor and 2-wheel drive tractor, John Deere, and the rear lift wouldn't work. And it was basically the same thing. I ended up pulling the valve apart and the valve was broke on the inside. The casting had broke off.
Rock shaft.
And on the rock shaft. I'm like, wow. Yeah. And maybe that's a lot more common, but those aluminum valves, I don't know that I've ever seen anything wrong on the inside.
Yeah, that was probably the strangest thing because it was aluminum. I didn't think it would ever do that, but it did.
Yeah, no, that's crazy.
Still going strong today.
Sweet. Do you have a mentor in the industry?
I would have to say it. He's now retired. Tim Soppy, that was at Indian Creek, was the one that pushed me to stay in it. And he taught me the reels. And he taught me to keep it simple when you're diagnosing stuff. And I honestly don't think if I didn't work, if he wasn't part of that team, I don't know if I would have stayed in it because he was really patient. He was a great educator and he saw the potential in me as a mechanic to be like, okay, you can pick this golf stuff up and go with it and you'll be good at it. So my mentor would be Tim Soppy, who's now
That's awesome.
Been retired for about 2 years now, 2.5 years. So, and then you met Nate.
Very cool.
You met Nate at Indian Creek. That's who replaced Tim.
Yeah.
Was Nate. Yep. So
trying to get him lined up for the podcast too. I hit a little gold mine in my trip to Nebraska.
We'd Us,
Well,
I could talk to a 2x4. Like we don't
that's
mind.
the same thing that Jordan Ross said. He can talk to a 2x4.
We
That's awesome.
we don't mind talking to people out here.
That's good, though. That's a good thing. Yeah. What do you think the most valuable lesson is that you learned from your mentor?
Be patient. If you're patient, things will come to you. And it's the same thing you tell any young technician that's getting into being a mechanic is you can throw things and kick and scream and cuss, but that bolt didn't loosen up or that hydraulic line didn't move because you cussed it out. You just got to be patient and everything will come to you and it will work out the way you want it to if you're patient and go about it in the right procedures. So that would be one thing that I took from him was always be patient.
That's awesome.
You'll get what you're trying to get out of it.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really good one. I mean, yeah. I wish I had more patience when in my younger days. I definitely got frustrated easier, and I don't know. I think patience is learned over time too. But I mean, it is really important to have somebody that's older than you or your mentor telling you you need to be patient, because I know when my dad said you need to be patient, I didn't give that a whole lot of thought. Like, he didn't know what he's talking about. And, obviously looking back on it, yeah, he knew what he was talking about.
Yep.
Well, what would be your dream job or opportunity?
Oh, my dream job would be to
Yeah.
go over and take over Brian's job at Medina.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I have had the pleasure of playing Medina with a former family member on my ex-wife's side and absolutely love the property. And just by following him on Twitter and seeing, pictures of his shop and stuff like that, I was like, yep, big operation. To me, it'd be a lot of stress, but a lot of fun at the same time. I would love to take Brian's job over.
Oh, yeah. No, that's awesome. Well, maybe you already answered the next question. What technician would you like to work with for a day?
I think I'd like to go up and he doesn't even know me, but I'd like to go up and work with Brian for a day up in Medina.
Oh, yeah. Well,
just to see
I
how
can't make you any promises, but I can give you Brian's number. I can, and I will if you want it. No, Brian's an awesome dude, and I'm sure he'd be happy to talk to you, and I'm sure he'd be happy for you to stop by too.
I'd love to.
And you're right. Their shop is amazing. I mean, it's a really old building, but I mean, they've cleaned it up. They added on to it. It's a super nice facility he's got up there.
Be Medina all the way.
All right. That's awesome, man. And you'd still be in the Midwest. So
yep,
not too far from where you're at now.
About 10 hours. Yeah.
About how far?
About 10 hours. The way I drive.
Oh, is it that far? Jeez.
Well, so it's 8 to Chicago, and I think it's another hour north, so maybe 9 hours. 10.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm thinking he's just west of Chicago. I'm pretty sure.
But
anyway,
they might be. He might be closer to the 8-hour mark, actually.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Well, that's definitely doable.
Yeah.
Well, what do you wish you'd known on day one?
Not to stick my fingers between the crossbar on a reel when you're checking cut.
Yes. Yep. That is a really good one.
First thing I would have loved to have grasped that knowledge instead of getting the nice blood blister behind the fingernail.
And just for the listeners that don't know, that bar is called the SOB bar because that's what it makes you say when you smash your finger.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard that before. I don't remember where I heard that, but I heard that a long time ago. The SOB bar.
That's the first I've heard of it called as the SOB bar, but it's going to stick. I'll use that from now on.
Yep, this is the SOB bar.
Get ready for tips and tricks.
Well, what kind of tips and tricks you want to share with us?
I guess I don't know if it's more. It's probably more of just like a fun little trick that I do with myself, but I try to see if I can set a reel by eye before I do it with paper.
Do it by feel?
but with no contact. I try to get really down.
Oh, okay.
So I try to bring it around, and I just try to look at the cutting edge of the reel blade, and then the top face of the bed knife and the front face. I try to see the air gap if I get it to cut paper. And I've never been able to do it with a single sheet, but I have been able to get it with a double sheet.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's a fun little trick.
So that's a little trick that I do. And then the other thing, I guess it would be more of a tip, is I never put tools away dirty.
Oh, yeah.
Because
well, I don't know if that's a tip or a sin if you do that.
Because you will really aggravate yourself first thing in the morning if you're reaching your toolbox and grab a greasy wrench.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, the other thing I would say is if you struggle, like a tip I would have is if you struggle with electrical diagnostics, it doesn't hurt to read the manual for a multimeter. You can really learn.
Oh, yeah.
You can really learn the advantages of the settings on a multimeter if you struggle with electrical diagnostics, and how just by reading that will help you navigate with ohms or current draw on a battery that's dying out, sitting overnight or something like that, or even just even if you're trying to add something into it and you want to see what it's pulling for current, so you know what fuse to amp it at. I know, like, electrical and hydraulics are probably the two strongest things we deal with that people struggle with the most.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, hydraulically, it's hard to give any tips and tricks because it's so hard to buy the pressure gauges because they're so pricey and the limited amount of times that we use them.
Yeah, it's hard to justify that purchase of a flow meter and all the pressure gauges. And then, that's the other thing. You got the price of the flow meter, and then you got the price of the fitting kit,
Yep.
and you need another $500 worth of fittings to even use the flow meter. And yeah, as many times as we would use it, in a normal golf course operation, it's definitely hard to justify it.
I think the other tip I would have is don't underestimate a K-strain test on a reel motor.
Mm-hmm.
It can't be that, and gone back and done it, and it's turned around and bit me in the butt because I was like, oh, it can't be that.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know,
right. And that's something that's not too hard to do.
No, you just
the K-strain test. Yeah.
Just jam up your reel and take the hose off, and there it is.
And I don't know about your experience. My experience is if the reel motor is good, it just barely drips. And if it's bad, it squirts out of there in a hurry.
That's pretty much how I was taught, was if you have a slight little drip, you're good. But if you have actual flow, you got something, you got a seal or something worn out in there, and needs to be replaced, rebuilt, something. I guess
I know in some of the operator manuals, it tells you, to measure out the volume, over a certain amount of time and get your gallons per minute. But in my experience, it's been obvious that either is not leaking or is leaking.
Usually usually for me, everything I've ever done, it's been obvious. Yeah, I didn't have to go and do mathematical equations and measure it out. It's been like, that's not normal.
Right. And especially you're doing a fairway mower or something like that, you got 4 other motors to compare it to. And you find out, this one's different.
Even a triplex, you got 2 other ones to compare it to. So you're
true.
Usually the rest of the machine will help you confident make your diagnostic procedures stick and be like, yeah, I got a failed reel motor.
Right.
Yeah, it's just, that would be my tips, is something that's so simple. Don't ever take it for granted and overlook it. Do it.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Because it could send you on a goose chase that you could have resolved by just saying, oh, it can't be that.
When I've seen that situation, with guys and especially electrical problems, and they pull out an electrical schematic, and it's 5 pages long, and they really get in the weeds on where the problem is. So identify the problem and make that electrical schematic a whole lot smaller, and don't worry about all the stuff outside that you don't need to be worried about. And, and then somebody starts testing something, and, the problem was the mower won't start. And the next thing you know, they're checking the headlights. And you're like, well, how did you get to the headlights from a no start situation? So, I mean, and I'm not calling anybody out. I mean, we're all guilty of kind of heading in the wrong direction sometimes, but just focus in on that particular problem area, whatever it is.
Like with electrical, it's, you got sensors now and all these advanced systems. And sometimes guys overlook the 5-volt reference signal on a sensor and it sends them on a goose chase.
Right.
So like you said, you end up on the headlights and stuff like that. Sometimes you got to read it, look at the schematic and be like, okay, I'm within my circuits. That's giving me an issue. Move down the circuit and go. But like I always start at the battery, then go to the fuse, move on. Keep it simple.
Yep. Keep it simple. It's been said plenty of times, but I think it needs to be reiterated. Just keep it simple. Let's talk about the Nebraska Symposium.
Okay.
And I really appreciate you having me over to your course. I don't know that you had a whole lot of choice. I'm sure Jordan and Brian just called you and said, hey, we're coming and we're bringing this Yahoo from Georgia with us. But no, thank you for having us there, and beautiful, beautiful property. I was blown away.
Thank you. We all appreciate that. I had told the crew after your visit that you said it was a beautiful piece of property. And it was funny because I listened to Brian Eplin and Jordan's podcast with you after. And it was, I played it for the guys at work. And when you said, it's special when you're on and you see like the vistas and the stuff like that you were recalling. And it was, and that's the one thing about Lost Trail is you can talk about it till you're blue in the face, but until you're actually on it and see the views and the rolling hills that close to Omaha, then you realize why we all love what we do out there so much.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's a lot to love.
And I had the option. It wasn't forced on me for you to visit, but following you on Twitter and stuff like that, I thought it would be really cool to meet you on property that I work at for the first time.
Oh yeah. That's awesome, man. That was so cool.
Kind of show off what I do. And you could see how small of a shop I have to work with. Like I said, when I talked to you earlier, I'm organizing my non-existent parts room when you were out here earlier. So, but yeah, it was good times. I'm glad I had all you guys out.
Yeah, no, it was so much fun. And yeah, just to say it again, the property is truly amazing. And I had this conversation with my director of agronomy several months ago, maybe last year, but when you walk onto a golf course, how do you know it's special? And I don't know that there's, one word, one thing, that you can say, well, this makes a golf course special. But being on the property, you get the sense, the feel, whatever it is. I don't have enough words in my vocabulary to describe it. But when you step foot on a piece of property, you can tell if it's special or not. And I mean, the level of detail and like you said, all the vistas, the rolling terrain, I mean, you have a special property. And there's, however many thousands of golf courses out there. And a lot of them are just golf courses and they're not special. And I'm not trying to take anything away from anybody. It's still probably fun to play, but it doesn't have the wow and the special factor like your place does.
Yeah, but like it's weird because every golf course has its own special like vibe to it. It's just outsiders picking up on that vibe when they play it or visit it. In our situation, when we visit a peer's golf course or whatever, but it's just our owner. That was a special dream to him to be able to build something like that in Omaha. And it finally came true. And I think that's why we all take so much pride in our jobs out there as well, is because it means so much to our owner as well. So
yeah, I think that's really important too, to have the ownership backing and, and not just financially or whatever, but, buy in, to the Kool-Aid they're making.
Yeah, it's definitely special to me. And I'm glad that you were able to come out and see and say that it's special as well. You could see what I see in it when I toured and accepted the position out there.
Oh yeah, I couldn't imagine. Yeah, riding around there the first time, and yeah, I want to work at this place. Yeah, I think I could work here every day. I
It,
mean that. Yeah, that's super cool.
like when I got there, there was 4 golf holes that were dormant seeded, and there was just straw mat, no grass.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I was able to watch at least, through that growing, I was able to watch 4 holes after it was being shaped come to life and become a golf hole from seed germination to what it is now a year and a half later, which was pretty cool. I'm glad I accepted the position and took the grow-in job as a crazy man. I was like, yeah, I'll do a grow-in.
Right.
So,
Why
but
don't, yeah, let's talk about that for a minute. How crazy was the grow in? Was it a ton of,
so,
construction equipment that you're working on too? Or,
so I didn't have, so the management company that manages the golf course was also, it was Landscapes Unlimited. That's our management company. And they also did the construction of the golf course. They built the golf course. I did not have to do any of the construction equipment. The few pieces that were still on site when I arrived and started were actually through a rental company. So if they had a breakdown, the rental company would come out and fix it. But I had growing equipment that was on site when I got there. So I had reels, I had the check, I had no shop. The shop was basically just a concrete floor and a skeleton. They were still doing the plumbing, the electrical. The entire parking lot was
Mhm.
dirt and mud. And we actually worked out of an old Williams Scotsman sea container that was converted into an office for the first 4.5 months I was there.
Wow. Yeah.
But I wouldn't,
That'll be tough getting through the winter too.
yeah, it was very tough. Luckily, I started in the middle of March.
Oh, nice. Nice.
But
Nice.
my first full winter there, we were in our shop with heat, which was nice.
Oh yeah. 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 That's, yeah. Yeah. Your climates, that's a must for sure. You want to do some rapid fire?
Yeah, we could do some rapid fire. I'll see how good I am at answering questions.
Well, so you've done great so far. What's your favorite movie?
Shooter,
All right. Oh man.
Wahlberg,
Yeah, that is a great. Say again.
with Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's yeah. It took. I don't know why. I've seen that movie 100 times and I love it. And I don't know, Shooter. It took me a minute. What would be your last meal?
My last meal,
Yeah, like the last one you could eat ever.
would be prime rib from Round the Bend Steakhouse in Ashland, Nebraska.
Prime rib. All right, I love it. I could have swore I heard somebody in the
My,
background saying, "You better say pizza."
my wife said Casey's gas station pizza, and
Oh, that's funny.
that's a hard number 2 right there. Gas station pizza. And
Well, I mean, I've heard it a lot, and I've heard Casey's has got really good pizza. I think it was Ryan Happenstall that I had on the podcast was a big Casey's fan.
okay.
He was from the Midwest before he went to where he's at now. I forget where he is exactly, but no, that's awesome. Yeah, what are you getting with the prime rib besides Casey's pizza?
I would get uh, I'd get onion rings and a baked potato, plain baked
I
potato
love it, man.
with salt and pepper on it and a little butter, and call it good.
Good deal. Well, what are you most proud of besides your family / your wife, since she's standing right there?
I would have to say probably the respect that I get from my peers in the business for only being in it for 10
That's
years.
really good. That's really good.
I'm proud of myself that I've made an impact on other people to get the respect, which I never
That's
thought.
awesome, man.
But it's like we said earlier, we're not afraid to help each other. And that might be
Hmm.
what it came from. But it's just, when I was in sales, there's guys that are 4.5, 5 hours away from me that I still have conversations with once a month, every 2 months, like I do my parents. It's just the relationships
Oh yeah.
you get from your peers in the business is really cool.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, and like we said, it's such a tight knit, community, the turf industry, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, we're all doing the same thing. We all do it a little bit different, and we just want to help each other. So good on you. I'm glad you're proud of yourself. That's awesome. because it's very important, and it's very hard for a lot of us to say that, even that you're proud of your accomplishments and you're proud of the things that you've done in life. And I think it's really important for everybody, no matter, where you are in life, to be proud of what you're doing. So thank you for saying that.
You're welcome.
Well, that is a wrap. You want to tell the listeners how they can get a hold of you? You mentioned Twitter several times. You got a Twitter handle?
Oh, I think my Twitter handle is it's my first initial B, my last name Knoche, Knoche 350. And then
Awesome.
I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram. And if they DM me on Twitter, I don't mind giving them my phone number or an email, and they can just get a hold of me that way if they ever want to talk or whatever.
Right on.
I got to
Well,
get
thank you so much, Brian.
Thank you.
Go
Appreciate
ahead.
it. I want to get down to National and do some of the equipment manager stuff and network that way too, and meet more of the guys on the East Coast and the West Coast and Midwest that I don't get to, because we're all so busy during the season.
Right. Are you planning on coming to Phoenix?
Phoenix will not be it. I am going to actually try and make it to next year's.
Okay. San Diego.
San Diego, yeah.
Yeah, bring the wife with you. Have a good time.
Oh, she'd love it. She'd end up at the beach the whole time.
Well, that's okay.
Yeah.
She can stay on the beach. You can go to some classes. I mean, it's all good.
Yeah, she's from North Carolina, so she misses the beach.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. That's one thing. Y'all don't have a beach real close.
Nope.
To Nebraska.
Got to travel.
That's right. Well, thank you again. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Appreciate
being on, and we'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you so much for listening to the Real Turf Techs podcast. I hope you learned something today. Don't forget to subscribe. If you have any topics you would like to discuss or you'd like to be a guest, find us on Twitter at Real Turf Techs.